viewers, and welcome back to the Self-Made Auto channel. Today we're going to be replacing some brakes on a 2013 Hemi Dodge Ram. So it begins. Pull the caliper off as usual. It's sticky there. Let's see. We'll get us a caliper holding hook. Pull this off. We got something to hold it by. Usually the calipers are seized up on these. It's pretty common for that to happen. Get a pry driver here. Now these use phenolic pistons, aka plastic, so you have to be careful with them. If you reach in here with a screwdriver pushing them in, they have a tendency to break or chip. Be mindful of that. Because I won't be surprised if the caliper is seized up though. It doesn't feel like it wants to go in. Let's see if this caliper is any good before we get too far. Going in, but it's retracting very slowly. I'll tell you what, let's just, for grins and giggles, let's just push one piston in at a time. It's kind of curious. Sometimes just one piston will seize. You gotta be careful using C-clamps on these because, like I said, they are plastic. Plastic-like, I should say. So that piston goes in okay. Of course, everything is pretty cold right now too. That piston goes in okay. Yeah, I suppose they're fine. Yeah, they seem fine doing them individually. We'll keep trucking. That feels good. So when you're pushing in pistons, if they're not going in easy, they should go in with, I don't know, easy to moderate effort, I guess. A couple of problems you could have, restriction, through the brake hose or through the system. The easiest way to isolate that is if the bleeder will come loose, crack the bleeder loose and try to push them in. If they still go in hard, then you're going to be replacing the caliper. If they go in easy at that point, it likely could be in the brake hose is the biggest culprit, particularly if it's a style brake hose. Let's say it comes around and it clamps to the the upper control arm and it has a metal bracket on it and the metal grabs a hold of the rubber brake hose. I've seen it often. You see this a lot on GMs where if you just take that metal clamp and open it up and get the restriction off the hose, that'll usually get them flowing free again. So we'll just we got to clean that up still. We'll just take and hang this up somewhere here. Keep it from dangling off the hose. Done so many brake jobs on our channel, it's like a broken record, it seems. Here we are, and then this is pretty classic. You see the pads fell right out. We can see, pads are getting due for replacement. I believe the other side's even thinner, but this side's getting pretty thin. And you can see they fell right out because this is very common to see vehicles come in with no brake hardware, and then the pad just kind of, you know, bounces around here in the bracket. It's not going to seize, I'll tell you that much. That one came off easy. Oh, what's the matter with you? You had to see that coming, right? So we typically spray these with fluid film. I'm going to try some of the WD-40 spray and stay lubricant. So I've used this, I used this when I was fluid filming my Civic, and it claims I have a temperature range from minus 100 to 500 degrees, self-healing, very, very similar to fluid film from what I've gathered and from what I've used of it. And it prevents rust protection up to a year. What it claims. You guys will see. It doesn't smell like fluid film, but it has the same type of consistency. So we're just going to use this to prevent corrosion between the hub face and the rotor. I would say it's a little thicker than fluid film as far as how it stays. It has a really unique smell, and I can't pin it down as to where I've smelt it before. But I know I've smelt it. I've got a big nose. And I remember stuff like that, but I can't figure it out. Put our new rotor on here. I'm just using an old axle nut as a spacer, just to hold the rotor for us. We'll get a rag. Wipe some of the packing oils off our new rotor. You can do this before you put it on if you like. Actually, soapy water works good, but you guys know I like them bright clean. Have you guys used any of the WD-40 spray and stay gel? If so, put it in the comment box below. I'd like to know your uses of it. I suppose we can just substitute it wherever we previously used fluid film, or still do rather. I just happen to have it over here. The caliper bracket is clean. I'm not gonna go through that whole process because we preach it boy, like a million times. You have to clean your caliper bracket. Bottom line, this one's clean, bright and shiny. If you don't, you're just wasting your time, because your pads are just going to seize. And you have to replace the hardware. I actually know of a local shop who will remove your hardware. He doesn't believe in it. So he always removes the hardware. You know, very similar to this brake job here. Removes the hardware and grinds down the ears. I don't want any customer complaints of clacking brake pads, because that's what you end up with. So we'll just make sure we have sufficient lube. Made in China, it says, along with everything else in the world. So there's our hardware. Now this style hardware goes on the ears of the pad. We're still going to carry out our process. We're going to lube inside of our caliper bracket here, just like we would with every other brake job. Try to slow down that rust as best we can. If you have time and you're doing these at home and you get all the rust out, you can always prime and paint these, get like an etching primer. Get them painted up, let it dry, and then lube them. That's always a good practice. So we'll pop our hardware here on the ears of our pads. Always make sure you get new hardware. Now this is Chinese hardware. However, it is stainless. I'm very familiar with this brand of pads. I use these, either the Napa Premiums or the Advance Auto CarQuest Platinums or the Wherever Platinums. I've had very good success with both brands. Napa also makes the Adaptive 1 pads, which are quite expensive. I don't have a lot of experience with those. I've installed a few sets. And you can see when you install these pads how the little springs on the hardware kind of make it like a anti-drag. Some vehicles actually use those anti-drag springs that go from pad to pad. You guys have probably seen those. So we've got them kind of loaded up. These can be a little bit of a pisser to get the caliper on because you're going to have to hold tension in on them and then put the caliper on. Prior to installing our caliper, I'm just going to get some of the rust chunks out. Make sure if you're using a wire brush, don't let it, tear the boots near the pistons. This one's actually relatively clean. If you have a lot of rust buildup here where it contacts the pad, that's all going to have to be cleaned off. This one's relatively clean actually. So just get some of the junk out of here. If the faces of the pistons are nasty, you're going to want to clean those off too. Even though these are a phenolic piston, they do use some kind of stainless or some type of alloy on the face of them. Now, somebody at some point has used anti-brake squeal on these. So it's a product that's quite similar to silicone in consistency and texture and the way it works. So we'll just want to rub some of that off. I've never been a big fan of this stuff. I've always just lubed metal to metal contacts. But they do make some of this anti-squeal. I may even have some of it around here. It's usually orange or blue. You squirt it on, put the pad on, it dries. It doesn't work very well. Alright, that looks pretty clean naturally. It's like 3 times in one show. Hose off some of the junk here. Let that dry. We'll stick our caliper bracket back on. I'm going to take the pads out of it because I don't want to drop them on the floor like 15 times. Consult your service manual for torque specs, Loctite, whatever they specify. I use Ugga-Duggas. That was one long Ugga-Dugga. We're going to install our pads and see how they want to come back out on you. That's good. They should be nice and free. Could be set up in there. You can see how they spring back out. So that's good. Let me go grab my lube. We'll grab I use the Permatex Extreme. I think it is. Yeah, Extreme. I always call it Permatex Ultra. Ultra, Extreme. I guess it's similar. So we're going to lube any metal to metal contacts, as is our habit to do. I've mentioned many times before that the folks say that the purple Permatex Extreme will cause your caliper pins to seize up. Now I do several hundred brake jobs a year, 250 to 300 brake jobs a year. I have yet to experience it. But having only done several thousand brake jobs, I'm sure at some point I will see it, but up until now, I guess I haven't. It is for use on the caliper pins. It clearly states right on their website. So I always put the top bolt in. We're going to give them a little squeeze and then let the caliper bracket down over top of them. That's the easiest, non-messy way to go about that. And then drop something on the floor every video, I swear. And of course, torque your caliper to factory specs. Once you're done, being that the pistons are in, you should be able to move your caliper nice and free. Now before you take it for a ride, make sure you pump up your brakes, or you're going to get a little thrill. Like I say, pump up your brakes. After you do, make sure your brake reservoir is full, at least up to the max line. Now be mindful when you do your rear brakes, you're going to have to take some fluid out of the reservoir, otherwise it's going to overflow on you when you push the pistons back in. And at this point, it's a good idea to flush the brake system if it's your own vehicle. Of course, this is a customer's vehicle and I can only do what we're hired to do. Fluid gets dark, attracts moisture, always a good time to flush it. Like I say, pump up your brakes, or right about here, you're gonna get really scared. Now there's just as many theories on new brake pad break-in as there is on should I warm up my car or not. So I'm not going to go through them all. I'll take you on my little test drive route. Make sure the brakes are smooth, the pedal's good, the steering wheel doesn't shimmy. No abnormal noises. I call this the North Maple Run. Only because we run on Maple Street. That was the low washer fluid indicator light coming on. So we just come up here, 30 mile an hour, bunch of slow speed stops. We'll head out on the big road, make sure it doesn't shimmy. Which I can't really recall ever having a new brake rotor cause a shimmy, but that's why we always clean the hub face. You may have noticed when we were cleaning it, I cleaned the outside edge and the inner edge because it has a recessed section in the middle. So you don't have to spend a whole lot of time there. It only contacts the rotor on 2 points. And then just when you give your car back to your customer, if it's your own car, just, you know, take it easy on the brakes for the first, 100 miles. I've never had any kind of brake seating issues or complaints. Supposed to get like 10 inches of snow tonight. That sucks. You like snow, I guess. Don't matter to me. Of course, everybody goes into a panic. Alright, we'll head back down here on Main Street, head out to the big road. Drive in the middle, it's a lot smoother. Same brake route I've used for years. we go back to the shop, it's always my habit to just visual inspection, walk around the vehicle, take a peek in on the rotor. You can usually see that the pad has full contact. I'll just kind of rock the vehicle back and forth, make sure it doesn't feel like it has a caliper hanging, which I don't suspect any problems here. So I like to get it up to speed. About 60. Apply the brakes. Feel nice and smooth. Street's getting rough. Park it where we found it. Move on to the next one. And there you have it, folks, putting the front pads and rotors on your non-Hemi Dodge Ram. Very debatable topic, putting on brake pads, whether you do it right or wrong or open the bleeder or whatever method you use. It's a method I've used thousands and thousands of times. Never had any repercussions come from it, and I'm going to continue to do them that way. At any rate, in the comment box below, leave your comments, criticisms, and concerns. Smash on that thumbs up button if you liked the video. Find us on our socials, Facebook, Patreon, whatnot, Google+, and just remember, viewers, if I can do it, you can do it. Thanks for watching.